There is a strip mall on Long Island with a nail salon at one end and a pizza place at the other. Between them there is a door with no sign on it. No logo. No company name. Just a door, and a small grey card reader mounted at chest height, and a camera in the corner of the awning that nobody has ever looked directly at. You badge in at 7:40 in the morning. The man behind the counter at the pizza place has known your face for 11 years. He knows you take 2 slices, no drink. He knows you always come in at 11:40, before the lunch rush, and that you never talk on your phone while you eat. Last winter he asked you what you did for work. You said, computers. He nodded. He said his nephew was good with computers too, maybe you could talk to him sometime. You said sure. He does not know that behind the unmarked door, 30 feet from where he is sliding a pizza into an oven, sits the most successful money-making machine that has ever existed. He does not know that the fund inside the building averaged 66% a year before fees for 3 decades. He does not know that it stopped taking outside money entirely, and threw the outsiders out, and that the only people allowed to own a piece of it are the 90 or so people who walk through that door every morning. He does not know that you are one of them. The parking lot has 19 spaces. Some of the cars in it are worth less than the pizza oven. There is a Honda with a dent in the rear quarter panel that has been there for 6 years, and a Subaru with a university parking sticker from a school that stopped issuing that design in 2004. There is no lobby. There is no receptionist. There is a hallway, and a coffee machine that a physicist repaired with parts he ordered himself because the service call would have taken 4 days. This is your life at every level inside Renaissance Technologies. Level 1. The letter. You are 31 years old and you are a signal processing specialist. You spend your days trying to pull a clean transmission out of noise. Radar. Speech. Static. You know nothing about finance. You have never read a balance sheet. You could not explain what a price-to-earnings ratio is if someone held a door shut behind you. This turns out to be the reason they call. The letter is on plain paper. It invites you to an interview at a company you have never heard of, in a town you have never been to, and when you arrive you discover the office is above a strip mall, and that the man who interviews you does not ask you a single question about markets. He asks you about noise. He asks how you would know whether a faint repeating pattern in a data stream is a real signal or an artifact of your own instrument. You talk for 2 hours. Nobody mentions money once. Later you will learn the phrase they use inside the building for people who spent their careers on Wall Street. They say those people have to be untaught. Experience in finance is not an asset here. It is damage. A flair for science is prized. A resume full of trading flaws is a warning label. They hire physicists, astronomers, cryptographers, people who broke codes for governments, people who study the weather. On your first day you count the people in the building and there are fewer of them than there are in the pizza place at lunchtime. Roughly 300, eventually. About 90 of them hold doctorates. None of them, as far as you can tell, has ever worn a tie. You ask a colleague what the firm does about the fact that none of you knows anything about finance. She says that is the point. She says the market is a very noisy signal being generated by millions of people who all believe they have a reason. The reasons are the noise. If you have never learned the reasons, you cannot be seduced by them. Then she goes back to her whiteboard. They hire you. Level 2. 11 months of cleaning. You expected a trading floor. Shouting. Screens. There is no trading floor. There are offices with whiteboards and a coffee machine that somebody fixed themselves, and a very quiet room in the back full of magnetic tape. Your first assignment lasts 11 months and it has nothing to do with trading. They give you decades of price data and they tell you it is dirty. Missing days. Prices recorded at the wrong time. Splits that were never adjusted. A commodity contract that changed definition in 1973 and nobody wrote it down. For 11 months you fix data. You track down paper records. You call exchanges that barely remember they had a 1968. You are the most expensive data janitor in the history of the world, and you hate it, and you say so out loud in the coffee room, and an older woman who has been there since the beginning looks at you over her glasses and says the only thing anyone needs to say about it. She says everyone has the same prices. Almost nobody has the same data. That is the moat. It is not a secret formula. It is 11 months of somebody being willing to do the boring part. You think about that sentence for the rest of your career. Because the world is full of people who want the formula. They want the equation on the whiteboard, the insight, the trick. There are men who will pay $10,000 for a weekend seminar that promises them the trick. Nobody wants the tapes. Nobody wants to call an exchange in a language they do not speak to ask what happened to a contract in 1973. Nobody wants to spend 11 months producing $0 of profit and no publishable paper. Which is exactly why it is worth so much. The most valuable asset in this building is not intelligence. There is intelligence everywhere. Every university on Earth is drowning in it. The most valuable asset in this building is a clean data set that took a decade to assemble and cannot be bought. Level 3. 50.75%. Your first accepted signal is embarrassing. It predicts the direction of a price move correctly 50.75% of the time. Out of every 200 trades, you are right 101.5 times and wrong 98.5 times. If you told a person at a party this was your edge, they would think you had failed. You bring it to the meeting on a Tuesday. Anyone in the building can bring anything to the meeting. There are no separate teams guarding separate secrets. There is one model, and everything anyone finds goes into it, and it is argued about in a room until it either survives or dies. Your signal survives. And here is what nobody outside the building understands. 0.5%, repeated millions of times, with borrowed money, on positions held for a few hours, compounds into something the human brain refuses to picture. You do not need to be right. You need to be right very slightly more often than a coin, and you need to do it more times than anyone else is willing to. Think about what that means for a moment. A casino does not know which number the roulette wheel will land on. It has no prediction at all. It simply has a house edge of a few percent, and enough spins, and enough discipline not to bet against itself. Every casino on the Las Vegas Strip was paid for by a number smaller than yours. You are not a fortune teller. You are the house. And the reason almost nobody else can do this is not that they cannot find a 50.75% signal. It is that a 50.75% signal feels like nothing. It feels like being wrong 98 times out of 200, because you are. A human being sitting at a screen watching that unfold will override it by Thursday. So you do not let a human being sit at the screen. The edge is not brilliance. The edge is repetition, protected from the person who found it. Level 4. The year it broke. 1989. The fund is 1 year old. It loses money. Not a little, it drops about 4% in a year in which the stock market goes up more than 30%. You could have put the money in an index fund and gone fishing, and you would have beaten the smartest room in America by 34 points. So they stop. This is the part of the story that gets left out of every article, and it is the only part that matters. They do not double down. They do not tell investors to be patient. They halt trading, and they take the machine apart, and for months a group of people who could have gone back to tenured chairs at any university in the world sit in an office above a strip mall and rebuild the thing from the inside. The next year, 1990, the fund returns roughly 56% net. It will not have another losing year. You will spend the next 30 years listening to people describe this as a firm that never loses. They are wrong. It lost. It nearly ended. What it did was stop, and look, and change. You are in the room during those months. Nobody shouts. That is the thing you remember. There is a man at a whiteboard for 6 hours and the only sound is the marker. At one point somebody says, out loud, that perhaps the whole idea is wrong and the market simply cannot be predicted, and the room considers this seriously, for a long time, as a legitimate hypothesis, because they are scientists and that is what a scientist does with a hypothesis. Then they go back to the tapes. If they had been finance people, they would have blamed the market. They would have said it was an unusual year, a 100-year event, an irrational environment. They would have raised more money and traded through it, and they would be a footnote now, if they were anything. Being wrong was not the crisis. Being unwilling to look would have been. Level 5. Nobody owns a book. At every other fund in the world, a trader has his own book. His own capital. His own P&L. If he wins, he is paid on what he made. If he loses, he is fired for what he lost. Inside this building, there is no such thing. There is one system. Every researcher's work goes into it. There is no personal track record, no star, nobody who gets to walk into a bar and say the number he made this year. At first you find this insulting. You are used to credit. Then you notice something. In every other firm you have ever heard of, a researcher who finds something good has an incentive to hide it, at least for a while, because his bonus depends on his book. Here, hiding it is worthless. The only way to get paid is to feed the machine. The compensation structure is not a nice idea about teamwork. It is the reason the machine works. There is a second consequence, and it takes you a decade to see it. Because no one has a book, no one can be poached. A rival firm cannot offer to double your pay and bring your track record with you, because you do not have a track record. You have contributed to something you cannot carry out the door. Your value, outside these walls, is a fraction of your value inside them. Everyone in the building knows this about themselves, and about each other, and it is never once discussed. Ego is a leak. They plugged it in 1988, and in doing so they also welded shut the exit. Level 6. 5 and 44. The fund charges a 5% management fee and takes 44% of the profits. Read that again. Not the standard 2 and 20. 5 and 44. It is, by a wide margin, the most expensive fund on earth. And for years, people with more money than you will ever see begged to be allowed to pay it, and were told no. In 1993 the fund closes to new outside investors. You watch a man who runs a pension for 100,000 teachers get politely turned away in a hallway. He is not angry. He is bewildered. He has never in his life been told that his money is not wanted. The fee is not greed. The fee is offense. Every dollar that comes in makes the returns worse, because the strategies only work at small size. So they price the fund at a level designed to keep it small, and when that fails, they simply stop letting money in. Sit with the arithmetic for a second, because it is the most important number in this story. 66% a year, before fees, for 30 years. After they take 5% off the top and 44% of everything above it, the investor is left with about 39% a year. 39% a year, compounded, for 3 decades. The greatest investor most people can name averaged around 20%. This is nearly double it, after the highest fees ever charged, and the only people who get it are the 90 people with doctorates who are standing in the coffee room arguing about whether Tuesday's signal is an artifact. The fee is not what they charge you. The fee is what keeps you out. Level 7. They give it back. 2005. The last of the outside money is returned. All of it. Investors who wanted nothing more than to stay are handed their capital and shown the door. From this day, the fund belongs to the employees. Roughly 300 people, of whom about 90 hold doctorates. That is the entire ownership of the greatest compounding machine ever built. The fund is capped near $10 billion. Profits are pushed back out to the owners every 6 months, so it cannot grow past the size at which it works. Understand what has happened. They found something so good that the correct business decision was to make it smaller. Every other firm on earth, upon finding a strategy that works, raises more money. That is the entire logic of the industry. Find edge, gather assets, charge fees. They did the opposite, and the opposite is why it still works. Level 8. The fund they let you buy. Because here is the part that should make you sit down. Renaissance does run funds that outsiders can invest in. One of them is an institutional equities fund, open to the public market long after the doors on the good one closed. In 2020, the employee-only fund returned about 76%. That same year, in that same building, run by that same firm, the fund that outsiders were allowed to buy lost about 22.5%. Same address. Same brains. Same coffee machine. 98 points apart. You are in the building when this happens. Nobody celebrates. Nobody is cruel about it. The gap is not a trick played on anyone. The strategies that make the employee fund work do not survive being made large, and the firm has never pretended otherwise. But you understand something that afternoon that you will carry for the rest of your life. What they sell is not what they own. That is not a scandal. It is the ordinary condition of every industry on earth, stated plainly for once, in numbers, in a single calendar year. Level 9. The signature. You retire on a Thursday. There is no party. There is a lunch, and it is at the pizza place, and the man behind the counter gives you the 2 slices and says nothing about it because he does not know. Before you leave the building for the last time you sign a document. You have signed it before, on the first day, and again in the middle, and now again at the end. It says you will not speak about the work. Not the methods, not the signals, not the room where anyone can propose anything. Not now, and not later, and not to a journalist, and not in a book. You sign it. You mean it. Everyone who has ever worked there means it, which is why, after nearly 4 decades, and hundreds of employees, and one of the largest fortunes in the history of finance, nobody outside those walls knows how it is actually done. Your own number crosses into 9 figures on a Tuesday afternoon, and you find out because a statement is sitting face up in the tray of a shared printer, and you pick it up to see whose it is, and it is yours. You put it in your bag. You go back to your desk. The strangest part is not the number. The strangest part is that the machine that produced it does not care that you saw it, and will keep running exactly the same way tomorrow, whether you are there or not. And now it is 7:40 in the morning and you are badging through an unmarked door between a nail salon and a pizza place. You have been rich for years. Your car is a Honda. Your neighbors believe you work in computers, which is true, in the way that saying the ocean is water is true. At 11:40 you will walk out and get 2 slices, no drink, and the man behind the counter will ask about your weekend, and you will tell him, honestly, that you went to your daughter's soccer game and it rained. He will never ask you anything else. There is nothing about you to ask about. So here is what I want you to sit with. They did not win because they were smarter, although they were. They won because they cleaned the data nobody wanted to clean, kept the fund small when they could have made it huge, gave the credit to nobody, and never, in 40 years, told anyone how. Every one of those 4 choices was available to everyone. Ask yourself which of them you would actually have made. Next time, we open the vault on a man who bought his first machine for $900 and put it in a laundromat.